Okay, we're going to move into Committee of the Whole. We do have 4 items in front of us today, but I'm going to make a slight adjustment to the agenda. We're going to do the first 3 items, and then we're going to go to approval of minutes and old or new business because the last 2 items are in the Mayor's boardroom. So we're going to do the work session on the budget and our executive session in the boardroom. Mayor Kelly?
The presentation will be out here. The work session will be in the Mayor's boardroom. So, okay.
So that's presentation is up to 3, and then for item number 4 is the work session. And okay, everybody on the same page? Thank you for understanding. It just makes it a little easier moving everybody in and out.
We're always on the same page.
So our first item today, we're going to do a status report from the Greenways Advisory Committee on Greenways 3 and the Greenway program. So I'm going to turn this over to David Marshak and Megan Lee from the Greenways Advisory. Make sure your mics are on. And if you have a presentation, do you have a visual presentation?
We do. Yeah, I'm going to pull it up right over there. All right. Good afternoon, Council, Mary Linville audience. Thank you so much for having us today. Because there are some newer members on the committee, we're going to just kind of start off by saying who the Greenways Advisory Committee is, what our charge is, and then move on to what we've accomplished in the past and what we're looking to do now and in the future. So the Greenways Advisory Committee, also known as the GAC, we have 11 members who meet monthly, along with Tim Wall, our Parks and Rec Department liaison. So the GAC acts on behalf of levy voters and ensures objectives that the levy are implemented. We use city-adopted plans and recommend city action in a community where partnerships, priorities, opportunities, and trends are always changing. In 2011, the Council adopted our strategic plan for land acquisition, and we reference that regularly when making decisions. Today, we are reporting directly to you, but normally we present to the Parks Board. We pass our recommendations on to the Parks Board, and then staff brings them to you. So under Ordinance 2006-09096, the GAC considers and recommends projects, plans, budgets, priorities, programs, and endowment funds to both the Council and the Parks Department. Specifically, Council has asked us to advise where land acquisition money should be spent. Under Section 2.20040, we have been asked to consider projects in the urban growth area as well as within the city limits. So there has been a lot of community support for the Greenways program, shown by voting 3 consecutive property tax initiatives, and they voted that the majority of that money be spent on land acquisition. So our mission is to connect ridgetops, shoreline, and stream corridors and old rail lines for a linear system of parks, forests, and open spaces for people and wildlife. I'm just giving you this so you can see what kind of projects, the scope of the projects we're looking at, and also to mention that wildlife is also a part of our mission, habitat and watershed preservation with light community use for the future as our city continues to develop and becomes more urban. Here's David Marshak.
So I'm David Marshak. I'm happy to be with you today. And I actually have been on the committee the longest time. I have 4 months left in my time on the committee. And I just want to note that when I joined the committee, I was the second youngest member of the committee. And We have a much younger, more vibrant, not that the old folks weren't in good shape, but because they were out there on the trails. We have a committee member up here who's adding to the population of Bellingham, and Megan, of course, and others. So I just want you to know that we have an age representative committee that works hard, and people are dedicated to this work, and a lot of it is because there are people who use the parks and trails. So let me talk a little bit about the 3 different programs since 1990. This has been a commitment of the citizens, of the council. I think one of you may have been on the council back then, or maybe 2. So you know all of this, but I also know that 4 of you are newer to this. So we've had a lot of transactions, a lot of acquisition, and again, the key point that I want to focus on is this sense of connections, that the Greenways project is really about how do we connect trails and parks and wildlife corridors. How do we make connections through the city that allow people and also wildlife to be able to move through the environment in ways that are healthy and satisfying. And as someone, I've lived in Bellingham for a decade now, it was impressive to me 10 years ago, and it's more impressive now. So I know you have all the data. I'm not going to read you the PowerPoint slides. So again, just to highlight 3 new park sites and 5 heritage sites improved. So major trail segments, and we'll get to the details on that, and trail renovations. So one piece of this that you may not be so familiar with is that there's been a considerable amount of funding that's been achieved through donations and then particularly through grants and matching funds. And this is really the work of the staff. I want to make sure we acknowledge them, that they've been very active and very effective. 31.5%. That's a lot of money in the context of 25 years of Greenways. And it's added a great deal to the capacity of the city to add to this network. So here's a look at the different areas and neighborhoods in terms of expenditures. And I think the best way to understand this, as I do from the history that I've been told and read and heard about, is that particularly in the beginning, the low-hanging fruit for the program was really in the Southwest. And that's why you see a significant amount of money spent in the Southwest. But if you look at the north, the 2 areas, Northwest and Northeast, you can also see that there's been a significant expenditure of funds to try to look at this notion of a fair allocation throughout the city and providing resources for trails and parks through every neighborhood. So some of the particulars to move from the whole plan to Greenways 3, of the last 10 years, the Chuckanut Forest, you're quite familiar with. The Cordata Community Park, which is property that was purchased last year that you approved most recently. This will be a significant addition to the quality of life in the Cordata neighborhood and will provide a good number of folks, and particularly families, with access to a developed park, but also to parts of the park that will be in more of a natural area. So this is really, I think, a big deal for the city and particularly for the north part of the city. The Locust Beach Tideland, this is really about making parking accessible and legal. If you were ever accessing it before the parking lot was purchased and created, you know that there was a big problem for the neighbors. And so this is a big change. And I think it's also one of the other values that I think we've held throughout this time is a recognition of multiple values, multiple goods, and trying to make recommendations that really honor that reality, that in every one of these decisions, there are multiple variables that you need to weigh with each other. Van Wyck Park is another example of a long-term perspective. Right now, there's not much there, but it's a neighborhood, it's an area that is likely to be developed, you know, depending on developers' plans and whatever, but it is within the urban growth area, and it is likely to be surrounded at some point, not that far in the future, with probably thousands of people living within walking distance. So the opportunity to purchase it, to have it available for the future, is also part of this program. So development. So again, this is about acquisition and development. That's the Greenways program. The Paddle Point Trestle, the Boulevard Park Beach, these two Whatcom Creek bridges. Greenways paid for half to replace the burnt bridge. This was a decision that was done with the administration to have funding from two different sources. And then, to be specific, this is the trail that will be dedicated, I believe, a week from today, which goes from just beyond Cornwall Park, and this is the dotted line, to beyond Sunset Pond. So this is part of a trail plan that we hope and expect will eventually you'll be able to go from the bay to the city boundary. That's the aspiration. Probably won't be able to get to Mount Baker on it, but to the city boundary at least. So the funding status, and again, you have this, so I'm not going to read it. The key point here is that there are significant remaining funds, and this is a function also of Greenways, which is that Greenways is about willing sellers. You know, there's nobody taking anybody's property in this program. So you have to have willing sellers. And some of this has worked out and other projects are still in the possibility stage. So there is almost $10 million, and we have some ideas about this. Some of this we believe should be allocated in particular ways. Some of these are improvement projects. Some of these are adding to trails. There is $4 million that was originally set up for the Overwater Walkway, so we have some recommendations about that. And also the $2.6 million, we have some recommendations. So for the waterfront $4 million, one possibility for at least some of those funds would be to enhance the development of the Whatcom Waterway Park. There's already some funding for that and plans for that, but we understand from Parks that some additional money could be directed toward enhancing the development of that park.
We also have some recommendations with money allocations listed here. This is an aerial view of King Mountain and Queen Mountain. We've dubbed it the Royal Valley Forest, and we own parcels on both of those viewpoints, and we are looking to connect them. Half of our parcels are located within the city limits, and the other half of both parcels are in the urban growth area. So this is kind of an overview of what we're trying to accomplish in the long term. The green is parcels that we own, and the pink is what we're trying to connect. This is in the strategic plan, and we have identified parcels and recommended acquisition between King Mountain and Queen Mountain. It's a critical connection that we believe will bring Cordata Park both east and west, and we believe that it's important as the population continues to grow outwards and while land is affordable. The next, it is, where is it? Oh, it didn't quite make it onto the slideshow. But the next one is Galbraith Mountain. I'm sorry I don't have the map of it, but you guys are all, it's in there. Perfect. That's a piece of land you are all familiar with. We are recommending that Greenways 3 money be spent on gateway trails to the mountain. Access from the north is really only through neighborhood street ends, and what's really needed is parking that doesn't infringe on the neighbors, a garbage can, a bathroom. We really want this to be an asset of that neighborhood and not a nuisance. Galbraith is an amazing mountain that attracts thousands of people in the mountain biking community from all over the country, and we really believe that infrastructure is needed in that area. The following are future priorities for not necessarily Greenways 3, but we do have a couple components in there. Here's a list of them, and I'll go through them. This is Lehigh Pier, located in the Little Squalicum Park, right at the end of an existing trail. It is a promenade like you would maybe see in California that offers iconic views of both the islands and the city, and we believe that this could be such a cool project that would be well loved and well received by the community. This money, the Overwater Walkway money could, also be used, we believe, in this area. Another future project that we are looking into is a future park on the Cornwall Beach site. There is a small existing park right off of Pine Street, and we would also like to connect a trail from the Depot Market Square to that existing park. We think that Overwater Walkway money could also be spent on this trail because it all starts with access. So once we create that trail, there'll be access to this future park. There it is. Another trail that the GAC is really interested in is connecting Alderwood Elementary to the Locust Beach and State Tide Lines, and both Marine Drive to the north and the south. This is an underserved neighborhood that we believe could benefit from a trail connecting their neighborhoods to their local park, for families and dog walkers alike. So there are other priority projects that are listed in your handout, but these are the ones that we just wanted to highlight. And I will now open this time up for some questions.
Council, questions? Councilmember Helm.
Just wondering about the cost of the Lehigh Pier, and I thought it was the Tilby, there's Tilbury, okay. Just wondering what the cost of building that out to be the amenity that you're recommending, what that looks like, and maybe that's a Leslie Bryson question.
Leslie Bryson, Parks and Recreation. We have done a feasibility of it, a preliminary feasibility. We're probably looking at a cost of around $3 to $4 million, but we haven't gone far enough in design work to know exactly how much that would be. We really need to do some more work on that. So any funding we have now maybe would be used more towards preliminary, and we've started discussions. The Tilbury Company still owns the infrastructure. We own the underlying ground, so we need to do some negotiation with them as well.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add a question on that. Is that just to make the infrastructure stable for public to use?
It would be doing some demolition of a portion of it and repairs and, yes, making it available to open to the public. Again, that's a very preliminary number based on some feasibility we had it looked at a few years ago.
Councilmember Borneman, the Lillquist.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up, when you were talking about the Greenways mission, about how important that connections for people and wildlife is such an important part of it, because many times people forget. Sometimes Greenways gets criticized because previous Greenways looked at acquisition and buying this different property and were not developing it. Well, it was never the intention of Greenways to develop everything into parks. It was for corridors and connections for people and wildlife, to many times to be left in natural states. And sometimes we lose sight of that. And I think it's really important that we remind people, because Greenways is changing. There's a lot of the new proposals is more towards development of parks, but that was originally set up different than, quote, parks, play fields and stuff. And that's very important. I still think a very important mission for us to keep our eye on of keeping those wild sections within our cities and around it. So,
Councilmember Lillquist.
Yeah, I'm liking what I'm hearing in general. I want to point to a couple things. I like the idea of using some of the waterfront money to enhance, accelerate, and enlarge the current Phase 1 for the Waterway Park. I think we could move into Phase 1.5 probably relatively quickly, and that would kind of add to what we're seeing in the waterfront. I'm going to talk about the other side of the coin that Terry just talked about, some of the land we buy to not develop, to leave it as open space and habitat and green buffers. But some of it we do buy to develop, like Cordata Park will be a park with traditional playgrounds as well as just, open areas. And the Van Wyck Park, that can be an area where there's currently a house, but it could be developed also. I mean, there are places where we need to put in where there's a development need, and going forward, if Greenways forward, that's the sort of thing that can be addressed. We can do both, and we need both halves of the same coin. I also liked where the Greenways Committee is looking at Galbraith. There was always some Greenways money set aside for access to Galbraith, and that's now kind of becoming focused. Access from the north side with public parking. As you say, we don't want to spill over. Council members may recall we actually acquired some thin rights of way on the north part of Galbraith, but we really need more significant access to other parts of Galbraith as well. So, I mean, in general, what I'm hearing of the recommendations and seeing in the drawings, I like.
Councilmember Barker.
Thank you all for your time. All the people that are on the boards and commissions, I don't know if the general public realizes how much time and energy you all put in there. And I think we need to look at what you're doing right, because your board and commission really is representative as far as age. Feeling that young mothers can feel comfortable, that people with or without children feel comfortable to be able to come to the meetings and participate, because we do need that broader demographic. So hopefully we'll take some notes on what you've done, the times that you meet, where you meet, why people are interested. That's great. The idea for parking for Galbraith is huge, and I'm very supportive. I'd like, as you guys move forward, I'm sure it's already on your agenda, but the parking and congregation for larger groups. We bring up youth groups there, and it's really dangerous and really confusing to try to get all those young kids out of a car and onto a bike and over to a trail, and where do we get together, and if it happens to be raining, I mean, a Ramada would always be nice, and bathrooms. So highly supportive of that, and again, I hope it's not lost on the general public that there are so many ways for you to be involved, participate, whether it's the library that you're interested or in the Greenways. There's lots of opportunity, and we need as many people from all kinds of different backgrounds to be part of it. So thank you for all of your time.
Well, for the years that I've been watching Greenways, and I was the only woman member on Greenways Advisory years ago, so it's really awesome to see all these women on there. Things are changing, and also the presentation. I loved the way it was laid out. I liked the fact that you were actually showing us pictures of the park. I thought that was excellent, so really nice on the presentation. Couple questions. So we're talking about advocating the money for the Overwater Walkway to other places. Does that mean, and that might not be a question for you, but does that mean that we are actually going to close the door on this project? Mayor Linville?
You don't have to answer that. Well, as you know, for the last 4 years, we have been having discussions about the ability to complete the Overwater Walkway. And where it stands right now, and Leslie, if you're close by, what my understanding is right now is if we get a letter from the Lummi Nation that says that we can proceed, that they're not protesting, I'll let her use all the right words, I'm probably not using them, then they'll consider going forward. But right now, we need that letter.
So it may be a little premature for us to be spending this money, if there's still some hope then?
I think the feeling of the staff and the committee is that the voters want to see something happen with the money, and we have a project. The language in the levy was for waterfront access. It was not specifically for an overwater walkway. That's what we allocated it for. But since that has been lagging and not a certainty of coming to a conclusion soon, we have a definite project that is waterfront access, and that's the Whatcom Waterway Park and Trail and that whole access to that part of the waterfront, which is developing now. The other thing with the overwater walkway is we still have to finish the cleanup of Cornwall Landfill and R.G. Haley before we can have access through that site. So rather than wait, the staff and committee felt that let's do something with this money that we can do now, and that would be Whatcom Waterway Park. So that was the thinking behind that.
Okay. I have another question. Does someone else have, so I can take turns?
Yeah, I forgot to add that recently the council had a discussion of really looking at about equitable waterfront access. Of course, it can't be as equitable as everybody within a mile, but I'm wondering if you all wouldn't be a really good group to take a look at that, especially since you would be determining where would we purchase, ensuring that we have access all along the waterfront, and this might be a really good discussion to have in that discussion of where would the overwater walkway, if we look at it that way, lie in the importance of ensuring that people all across the bay have access. So maybe if we do decide to start putting the money towards some other things, that might be a really good lens to look through, and I'd like to hear back from whatever group looks at that.
Mayor Kelly.
Yeah, I think that one of the advantages to looking at Tilbury or Lehigh is that it's already established, and that's part of the concern about putting anything else into near shore is the concern about the mitigation and the potential impact. So I think that's great to look at other places, but that was one of the reasons that former Councilman Fleetwood and I looked at that particular project. Is it had less barriers because we'd be talking about taking things out of the water rather than putting more things in.
Thank you, that's helpful. Okay, I have another question. I'm curious about, oh, sorry, go ahead, Dave.
So as far as access, obviously the pier would give access, to the north. We were, as a committee, I think I can say, quite excited about that possibility. And, it's just we just don't know enough about the feasibility. And we did send some scouts to check out actually the scouts sent themselves, who will remain unnamed. And, it's quite an incredible feature, and it would be an enormous asset to the city, so the only reason that we presented two options really was we just don't know what the feasibility is of the pier. But certainly the enthusiasm and excitement about it is there on the committee.
My additional question is about access to Galbraith. So if we put parking and restrooms at an entrance at Galbraith and we don't own that property, what position does that put us in? Because I know part of the reason we cannot host events on Galbraith is because we don't own it, and so we're trespassing. But I'm wondering if you could explain to me what this means to us if we are putting infrastructure and facilities access to something we don't own.
The WMBC does have a user agreement with Polygon to use the property for their activities. So we already have some public parking and trails that go there through the Birch Street development, and there are different ways, different public access points to get up there. But it's not yeah, it's not potentially a forever thing because there is not a public ownership, but that is also something we've been discussing.
Okay. Mayor Kelly.
Yeah, I think we'll be bringing back information to you in the next week or 2 weeks about some potential, but we don't know what it's going to be yet. We're waiting to see what the county's position is also.
Okay, David.
And on the committee, we were also aware of the concern that you just described. What was also brought to us were really two issues. One is that the street ends where people access it from the neighborhood really are overused from the neighbor's point of view already. So there already is a situation that's exacerbating potential unhappiness between the people using the mountain and the people who, whose street is being parked on. And then this is not exactly the same issue, but it's related to the whole Galbraith issue, which is that even at the south end where people are parking on the highway, it's just a miracle that somebody hasn't been hit already, which you described, people getting out of their cars. And so it really is a situation where I leave it to the mayor and the council to decide how to proceed, but I think it's a situation where you want to do something rather than sit back and wait for for bad things to happen.
Council members, does anyone else have any additional questions for Greenways? Okay. Thank you, David and Megan, and all of your crew for all the work you do on the advisory committee. Thank you so much. Okay, so the next item for us today is going to be a continuation of the discussion of our draft 2016 Bellingham Comprehensive Plan. And I believe that introduction is going to be by Rick Sepler. Is that correct? Or maybe it's Greg? I'm not sure. Okay. Well, then I will introduce Rick Sepler, our director.
Good afternoon, members of the council. We come before you for the last workshop session before the scheduled public hearing on the 17th. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we tackle some of the issues to be considered. As council is aware, we've already issued a revised plan. So perfectly appropriate for council to take action today, propose new amendments. What we'll do is we'll post those at the end of today or as soon as their changes are done. We'll also introduce them at the beginning of the public hearing. And as council recalls, we're going to be keeping the public hearing open through the end of the week in terms of written comment. The changes we're talking about are not substantial. They're dealing with refinements in the Parks and Open Space chapter of the plan. There's an updated capital improvement or capital facilities plan matrix that most closely represents the budget that's proposed, so minor changes in that. Nothing substantial, but it does spot on match the amounts in the budget. And there are other policies that have been proposed for discussion today, for example, establishing a clarification on the police intent to have proactive and reactive policing. Our schedule for today would be to deal with the parks and issues, to resolve those, and then consider any other extending issues you'd like to direct us to review. And then we'll take those, follow through, and make sure they're circulated, and we'll include them in our presentation. And with that, I'll introduce our parks professional staff.
Thank you, Rick. Leslie Bryson, Parks and Recreation, and Nicole Oliver, our development manager. At the end of our last work session with you on the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space chapter, you voted on making some changes, and we have incorporated those into the draft. And in the meantime, you indicated that you would send additional via email. We received emails from Michael Lillquist and April Barker. We included those in a comment tracker. And unfortunately, I think it was kind of hidden in the online agenda because the Committee of the Whole wasn't called out separately, but it was included in the full packet. So hopefully you got a chance to look at these. And we can go through these individually if you like, or how would you like to proceed?
Councilmember Lillquist.
I'm interested in moving actually 4 of the changes en masse, the ones that I brought up.
Yeah, I was going to move to do.
Sounds good.
So you do it to all of them.
You said 4 because there's something you want to pull out?
No, it's just that the rest were April's idea, and I wanted to let her lead on that.
And April wants to move, I think,
I'll move mine.
all of
Yeah.
them, so.
Can I go first?
Yeah.
So on the comment tracker, items number 91 through 94, I brought up some issues that had to do with balancing development in sensitive areas. The staff agrees with those proposals or agreed with minor changes in language, and I would move that we adopt comment items number 91 through 94.
Second.
Boy, everybody's on the same page now.
Any discussion? Okay, we have a motion to approve items 91 to 94 in our updated comprehensive plan update. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Councilmember Barker.
Well, thank you to the park staff for working so quickly on these last changes, and I appreciated all the feedback. So I would move that 75 through 90 in the comment tracker, that we move staff's recommendations forward.
Second.
April, can you repeat that 71 to, what was our number again? 71 to 90?
75 through 90.
75 through 90. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving updated comprehensive plan update items 75 to 90, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Well, that takes care of that portion.
That was quick.
Look at us, how efficient we are. Councilmember Lillquist.
So if we're through with parks, I'd like to move back to the capital facilities plan. This has to do with what Mr. Sepler mentioned. Back at the end of June, when we were doing the capital facilities plan, I indicated that we actually didn't have a policy which had to do with our proactive versus reactive policing. We had a presentation on that, so we're now fully briefed, and I would like to move that we add a new policy under goal CF4. I have some draft language, but I'm not wedded to it. Basically, it says, strive to achieve adequate police patrol staffing levels to meet the goal of an even split of proactive and reactive time per hour.
What page are you on?
There is no comment tracker on that. That was email that was sent on last week, I believe.
Second.
Which part of the CF4 is, again, the...
CF4 is on page 15 of the most recent draft of the capital facilities chapter. That's the portion that has to do with our fire, EMS, and police policies.
Okay, we have a motion in front of us. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to hear staff.
Good afternoon,
Greg?
Greg Ockett, Planning Department. We just got this today, so I appreciate the motion, understand the intent. I'd like to have Chief Cook review the actual language, but we understand the intent.
Councilman Bordeman.
And that was going to be my comment. I want to, Chief Cook's not here. I'm not prepared to vote on any language that we haven't, at least staff doesn't have a chance to comment on. So I would have to abstain on that because there's not enough information.
Councilman Barker.
Well, I would move that we amend the current motion that we'd like a policy that reflects the community policing direction, and we'd like to entertain language from Chief.
Second.
Councilmember Lillquist.
Well, it's kind of funny because that's exactly what happened in June. I basically said we should add a policy, and the comment is, well, let's hear from the police chief. Well, we just heard from the police chief, so I'm bringing it back. Like I said, it's the intent is to add a policy which basically embodies exactly what the chief presented to us.
Mayor Kelly.
And normally, the way that works the best is that the chief gave you a proposal, a report, and I think the direction should be that he bring back some language for you to approve, rather than one of the council members writing the language. I would feel more comfortable with that. I know that I also support the idea that we want to have proactive policing. So you got the report, and now we need the language. So we will be happy to bring you back something if that's your wish. And it sounds like it's Michael's wish and other people's wishes.
So we have a motion and an amendment. Our motion is using for CF4 in the capital facilities plan to meet the goals of proactive and reactive policing.
Adding a new policy on that issue, yeah.
And adding new policy. And the amendment is to have the police chief supply language to put into this policy. Correct? Are we all under the same understanding? Councilmember Lillquist.
It's not just community policing, it's actually talking about the service level split 50-50. So any language the police chief wants to bring forward on that is fine.
Yeah.
Councilmember Parker.
I want to thank you for bringing this back. There's so much throughout this comprehensive plan process, and it's easy to kind of give a direction, and it takes a lot. I've noticed with my own proposals to have to go back and make sure that there's a follow-up. So thank you for bringing that back to the council, Michael.
Okay, so I just want to, Councilmember Hamill, you look like you have a question.
I do, thank you. So I just want to make sure, I don't want to vote the wrong way on this. I want to vote my intent, which is to have Chief Cook bring back language and have him be the author, or his staff be the author of that language, with the intent to have adequate levels that he described and articulated here at the last time he was before us.
Okay. So what we do is we're going to take the amendment first, and then we're going to take the original motion. So the amendment, and help me if I'm doing this wrong, but the amendment is to have Chief Cook supply language that will meet the requirements that we've asked for police staffing for our new policy. Any other discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, so did I hear 7? No, yeah, okay, so motion carries 7-0, and that is for the amendment to have Chief Cook supply the language for that. The original motion is the amendment to the policy for CF4. The language that Councilmember Lillquist provide is for meeting goals for proactive and reactive and service levels. Correct? No?
I think it's now modified that we're adding a policy, but the draft language will come from the police department. So the motion now is to add a policy.
Okay, all right. Everyone else a little hazy on that?
Totally.
Okay.
Is the motion simply to add a policy?
Mm-hmm. No, as amended, the motion is to add a policy with draft language brought forward by Chief Cook.
You want to look at the language first?
Without the language.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm confused because I thought the first initial motion was the language that you had proposed, and the amendment was language that we're asking Chief Cook to supply the language for the, so I see them as two different things.
No, the original motion was to add a policy with proposed language. The amended version is to add a policy with new language yet to be determined as provided in draft form by Chief Cook. So the base motion is still to add a policy, but the language would come forward later.
Okay, so the original motion is to add the policy. The amendment is to ask Chief Cook to supply the language for it. Does that, everyone?
I believe you've got that. If I could just provide clarification, our hope is, again, this is not the final on this issue. Our hope is to make sure as we go to the public hearing, we have the full suite of all the policies. What we're hearing council direct us is there's agreement that the 50-50% is the goal, but would like precise language crafted by the chief. If you direct us to do so, we would do that and include it into our presentation for the 17th so the public could comment on that. If it is language is not acceptable, or if there's some issue, we certainly in the subsequent workshop session or committee of the whole can revise it accordingly.
Okay, so the original motion is we're asking for the policy. Mm-hmm. The amendment is to have Chief Cook supply the language for that. Councilman Borden.
Yeah, and I'm not going to be able to vote for doing a policy that we don't have language for. So we're fine with what we've got right now with that amendment. We don't need to go going any farther is voting for a policy that we don't have language for. So it doesn't make sense to me why we would be voting on doing a policy. We were asking staff to bring forward, then we should vote on it. But to do it, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Councilmember Lewis.
Maybe I'm...
Well, this is the procedure we have followed probably a dozen times so far in the comp plan, where we give the intent of the policy and we prove the intent, but even if we don't have the language yet. So I think we're following our past practices and improving the intent of the policy, and then we wait to finalize it later when we actually have draft language.
Okay, so again, we have a motion and a second, and this is to include the policy in our capital facilities plan around police service levels. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Abstentions? All right, so motion carries 6-1. All right, everybody clear on that one? Okay. Any other additional items for the comprehensive plan review? Councilman Bordelon.
Mine isn't an additional item. It has to do with our schedule. When we originally set the schedule, we assumed that this comprehensive plan would just be a breeze. We would blow right through it. We would have our hearing, and then, well, this has not been the case. This has been, it's gotten much more complicated than what we thought. And what I would like to see is we got the hearing on the 24th.
No, the 17th.
Oh, the
Next Monday.
17th, okay. And just wondering if maybe we can do it in the 24th, but if we can't complete it in the 24th, if we need to schedule, can we schedule before the 7th, another workshop if we need to, just to make sure? Because
we've reserved 2 dates after the 17th, and we'll reserve additional dates until council is satisfied that the plan meets muster. And we want you to be thoughtful and consider all of the comments received. And although we would like to see it adopted sooner rather than later, we want to make sure we get it right.
Yeah, I just don't want to see us having to set it out again and then say we can't do it because we've enough conversation.
Yeah, the key here is successfully to approve the right plan.
Yeah, okay.
So a couple other things that I want to note on that is that the written record closes on October 20th. So if anybody does want to make sure they're including their comments, that does close on the 20th. Our next meeting on the comprehensive plan is next Monday, October 17th. We'll have a public hearing. October 20th, again, the written record closes. October 24th is our Committee of the Whole work session, and November 7th is tentative Committee of the Whole work session with adoption. So that is our plan right now. Is there anything else that we would like to add to today's meetings? Any other things? Anyone else on the comprehensive plan?
There is a public comment period for all of your Committee of the Whole sessions, and you may wish to ask if anyone wishes to speak.
That's a very good question. Thank you for that. I forgot as well. So we do have public comment built into this session. Is there anybody who wishes to speak on our comprehensive plan today? Going once? Twice? Third chance? No one else speaking for public comment for comprehensive plan? Okay, thank you for that reminder, Rick. I appreciate that. Okay, our next item today is going to be a review of the 2017-2018 biannual budget, and this will be presented by Mayor Kelly Linville.
And I'm going to put some slides up for you. Okay. I want you.
I haven't seen it either.
Well, I'm just going to say, we're going to refer to it and then we're going to talk about it from there. And then that's. So just to begin with, this will be referred more when we're into the work sessions, but I wanted to show you something that we normally don't show you in this fashion, which is we're talking about the general fund budget, which is the 157 million, on and on and on. Then we have the other funds, which is over almost $400 million, which is added to the general fund for operating, for the operating budget. And then if you look in the third column, when you get up to 533 million, you're including all the capital expenditures, which are, we don't do our budgets separately right now. We don't do an operating budget and a capital budget. That is a goal of mine that I am working on. But I just wanted to show you that while we talk about $157 million, 158, our total budget is much larger than that. We just don't have as much control over spending that additional money. So it's a bigger budget than we normally talk about. And that's all I wanted to show you with that slide. Brian, if you want to just start. Just to start, as you all know, we are stabilizing our revenues that are coming into the city, which is a good thing, which means that the story of this budget is our budget and the Dan's smiling at me already. I haven't even said anything yet. The story of this budget is basically looking at the services that we are able to provide and making some strategic improvements and additions to what we're doing now. So even though we're not making a whole lot of changes, the biggest changes obviously are settling our 9 contracts and the salaries and benefits that go on with those. The total budget, the over $300 million, is money that we're spending that carries forward the priorities and the programming that you've all prioritized. So I just wanted to say it is a pleasure to do the budgeting now, even though it's a little stressful, because I think the council has made very good decisions on wanting to get as close to a balanced budget as we can. And as you'll see, and Brian and I will explain to you, we're not balanced quite yet, but we gave ourselves 4 years. And then secondly, that the money that we're able to carry forward means we can maintain our workforce, which is our greatest asset, and provide the services that the people in this community have expected. So with that, the overview is, back. I was still looking at the cover page, so I'm a little slow. So the key investments that we've made that have been in addition are public safety, environment, social services, and economic development. We'll be going through some specifics on those now, but we're also going to be going through every department head will be presenting to you, like they did last year, basically their accomplishments and what they're investing in for the future. So there isn't a whole lot of changes. Top priority is public safety, at least for me. So the budget I'm proposing looks at proposing 4 new police officers, 2 in each biennium, continuing our community paramedic, looking at our resources as goes back to Michael's community policing model for neighborhood policing, and investing in our camp cleanups. So that's for the public safety. The environment, we've put down things that we're doing, that the HIP program, the homeowner improvement program, we're investing $900,000 to start the city's own program rather than the program that was funded by an ecology grant. That was presented to you several meetings ago, and it helps us protect Lake Whatcom and the runoff from going into the lake. We're investing in a $15 million in a state-of-the-art pre-treatment for our drinking water supply. I think we're the first ones to do this, and I'm very excited that this kind of environmental technology is something that the City of Bellingham is willing to pay for and adopt. The land acquisition program is almost $2 million, so that is our surcharge on Lake Whatcom. And then the Squalicum Creek investment, $1.3 million, will continue with that investment, and $2 million for remediating the waterfront and the contamination that we have there. I want to tell you that the $2 million we have is not enough to do the remediation that we're responsible for. I think the R.G. Haley site is getting close to $16 million. So what this is what we're putting in, and that's why we have the MOTCA funding on our legislative agenda, because we will continue to go down to the state and ask them for cleanup money. Social services, $5.7 million investment in affordable housing. We're spending $410,000 for the next 2 years of the biennium on the homeless outreach team. $160,000 on intensive case management, which is the opportunity to take some of our most complicated residents and have case management that follows them through their signing up for health care, their diagnoses, and the treatment and services that they need. We also partner through our community economic development grants, block grants, human and social service provider partnerships. So CDAB is something that we also invest in, both the state money and the council has chosen, I think 2 or 3 years ago, to enhance that with the general fund. Two of the biggest issues we have in our community right now are economic development and housing. So as we look at what to do through our LEAN programs and through our affordable housing programs, we also need to look at how do we make our community economic development ready for jobs and for jobs that pay a higher salary, because we do have an expensive community to live in. So we have urban village implementation, which is looking at both Samish Way and Old Town. Those are our priorities right now. We're putting $750,000 in the next biennium on incentives for developing in those areas in downtown. Also, we've looked at system development fees, and we've changed timing on those, and we've looked at realistic permit fee reductions that will let us give incentives to investors and developers who, for where and when we want the development. The retail strategy for downtown, Pinky brought up let's paint the downtown. She didn't say pink, but she could have.
I did say paint. I
You
said
did say
vibrant.
pink, okay.
I want vibrant colors.
We had a great presentation. Actually, 4 years ago, we had the same people come up and present to us. There's a concern about the potential empty buildings in the downtown. And that has been an ongoing kind of a nagging problem that is, even though we're doing better now. And so I decided to recommend investing $60,000 in a retail strategy for downtown, which would include the things that Pinky had brought up and the other council members about how do you make the downtown exciting, attractive, maybe a bit quirky, but a place where people will want to come even more than they do now. The retail strategy costs $60,000. The result of that potentially could be hiring a retail specialist that would recruit for downtown businesses. I personally felt uncomfortable investing public money in something that would only benefit a few downtown business property owners. So we'd like to look into the future after the retail strategy is done about partnering with Downtown Bellingham Partnership or another entity to raise the money outside of the city dollars to pay what is estimated to be about $40,000 for a retail specialist. So that would not be somebody that we would pay for or would work for the city of Bellingham. Then we spent about $400,000 in our regional economic development initiative. So we do fund Downtown Bellingham Partnership. We give money to the Small Business Development Center, which I believe is a very good investment for an organization that helps small businesses get their business plans started and going. And one of the things that was completed by the region, our regional economic, was the Choose Whatcom website, which has been very successful and gotten a lot of interest in, I guess, hits is what you'd say, but hits. All right, the capital. As you saw, the investment in capital is greater than our general fund budget. And these are some of the key investments that we want to do in the next 2 years. So the amount of money's there, and the top 10 projects. One of the things I'd like to do is make sure that what we put capital in the budget is stuff that we have the money to implement. So finish these for this 2 years and put some more in so that there's actually accomplishments we can show. We do a lot of capital investment, but I don't think maybe we talk about it in a way that demonstrates how much there really is. We have 200?
Over 200.
We have over $200 million worth of capital improvements and investments that we need to make. For me, that means we also need to look at how we use our budget strategically to put aside money every year to look at our capital facilities plan and the kind of maintenance and repair that we need to do. I think we should be putting
Well, capital maintenance, I mean, the estimate is we're putting about $600,000 citywide into the general fund portion of the capital maintenance program. But a lot of our buildings need a lot more work than that. So anywhere from $1 to $4 million a year we could be investing in capital maintenance programs alone. We are trying to identify specific projects that would do both of that. So we might talk about a replacement of a building that would help on the capital maintenance side and preventive maintenance. So the number is a little bit variable there, but several $1 million a year we could be spending on our existing buildings.
So our goal is to increase our investments in that portion of the budget. The other thing that was mentioned in level of service was a surplus property assessment, and then bring it back to you to look at that. Those revenues could definitely be used in a capital or in a facilities maintenance program. So there is money outside just the general fund that might go to help get this taken care of. I never get tired of talking about investing in our employees. So our number one asset are the people that deliver the services to our community. We have 850 FTEs that work for the city of Bellingham. We are a service organization, so that is our job. And I am very happy that we were able, in the last, I think, Brian, was it 18 months, 2 years? 18 months to be able to actually reach agreements with all of our bargaining units, because when we started, we had 9 open contracts, which we're trying to change. So you kind of get them on a regular basis rather than all in 1 year. So that is 70% of our budget goes to our salaries and benefits for our employees, and they're the ones that deliver the service to our residents. So if you look at slide 9, this shows you all the funds. This is the total funds that we have. If you look at slide 10, we take that general fund portion, which is really the portion that we talk about for our budget. The enterprise funds are the priorities that the council has set by the policies that we've passed that created a home fund, a TBD, other dedicated funds that go for operation of the budget, but are not funds that you and I talk about how we're really going to spend them. So the 29% general fund is demonstrated, how that breaks down is demonstrated in the graph on the right, the pie chart. And you can see that police and fire take the majority of that money, and parks, and then how it's divided up the rest of the way. But this is the 158 million. That's how we divide up what I would call the flexible money. And finally, here's the time frame for getting our budget adopted this year. We're going to start this afternoon in the mayor's boardroom and start with the presentations of the department heads. It's a time to ask them questions about their priorities, and also to ask questions if there's any ideas you have about changing what their department is actually doing, or reprioritizing, or some other way changing their work plans that they're going to be presenting to you. That's based on what's in this budget, but as you know, you get to amend the budget and pass the budget, and so there may be changes that you want to make. So does anyone have any questions?
Member Hamel.
On page 6 of the presentation, there's only one. Urban village implementation is the only item in the whole presentation that doesn't have a dollar figure assigned to it. I'm just wondering what that looks like.
Well, there isn't a specific line item in the budget. As we implement the urban village plans, we've built money into the budget, or we come and ask you for money. So that's why there isn't a figure. I think that when Tara, Sundin, or Rick makes their presentation, we can see if they can give you an estimate of things that we might be spending. But some of it also is like for the Aloha site, a lot of the money that's going to be proposed, there's some from our home fund, which is not general fund, but there's also grants from the state that we're waiting for to build that. So there's total project costs, and we may be not the majority of the funding. So they kind of come up as we're implementing them. But we'll see if we can get you an estimate.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, or, okay. So the second part of this will be our work session, which we are going to conduct in the mayor's boardroom. But before that, we're just going to finish the two items that are on our agenda right now, which are the approval of the minutes. So the minutes we have in front of us is for our committee meetings for September 26th.
Move approval.
Second. Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Old or new business? Councilmember Barker.
Friday, October 14th from 1 to 5 o'clock is the library board retreat, so all council members are invited. It's in the Encore Room at Mount Baker Theater. We'll be having a lot of discussion, some of it level of service, so it would be really great if you all could attend.
Anyone else?
It's open to the public.
Councilmember Murphy.
This morning I had a chance to attend the Indigenous Peoples celebration that was taking part this morning at Whatcom Community College and this afternoon at Northwest Indian College. This was a student-led event, and so the students gathered all kinds of singers, dancers, speakers. It was a great occasion, and I just really wanted to thank this council and all of the community that supported transitioning away from Columbus Day and implementing Coast Salish Day. So with that, I just want to wish everyone a very happy Coast Salish Day.
Anyone else? Okay, I have one item to update the council on. Just wanted to give you a facilities update plan. I know you've all been very patient in hoping on our new space. Our tentative hope was we were going to be there in August, and just letting you know that it's probably going to be November. So we're in the city staff is in the process of moving all of the HR to the federal building. So thanks everyone for your patience, but we may have new space by November, just so you know.
Totally forgot.
Yeah. And I'll tell you that we did a great job of repurposing and finding furniture, and we have kept our costs down really, really low, which we are very proud of, to be able to make all of this happen, and we will all have a little bit more space. So thank you very much to the staff who's making this happen, but again, probably November. Anything else on this? for old and new business? Okay, so now we are going to retire to the mayor's boardroom. We are going to have two things. We are going to have the last agenda item to review the budget, and second, we're going to have an executive session. Executive sessions are closed to the public, and there will be a report out in our meeting tonight. There is one executive session. It's a labor negotiations with the Police Guild, and we're going to review proposals. So all in all, we probably have about 45 minutes ahead of us. So I will be back here by 3:15 to adjourn. Thank you again. We are going to the mayor's boardroom for the second part of our meetings.